All right, we will call the May 18th ICC Fire Service Membership Council meeting to order. Carl, can you please do a roll call?
I'll be glad to. Christine Reed, I've got you. Tim Diehl, I've got you. Brian Adams, I've got you. Rick Boisford, are you on? Rick Boisford. Wendy Collins? I believe Michael Desrochers is going to be out today. He's got a conflicting meeting that he sent in for us. Chief Hyde, I saw you. Let's see who we got here. Ed Kaminsky, are you on? Okay, Chief King, I've got you. Jonathan Lund, I've got you. Larry Medina.
Here.
Yep, I see you now. Hey, Chief, I sent you a note as well too. If you can just check your mail for me when you get a minute. Nothing urgent. Doug Nelson. Marshall Nelson. I know Kelly Nicolello, I've got you, sir. Tina is going to not be able to make it today. She sent her regrets. And Marshall Toomey, I think I saw you.
I'm here.
Very well. And Chief Wassom, I believe, sends regrets for today as well. And then Chief Metz, I think I saw you.
I am here.
Very good. And I see, I think Tim Schmitz is on as well. All right, let me take a run back through and make sure we didn't have anybody else join us. Rick Boisford, Wendy Collins, Ed Kaminsky, Doug Nelson. And that's it. Let me do a quick count for you. 1, 2, 3. We've got enough for a quorum, Christine.
Great, thank you very much. Well, I thought that my camera was working, so I'm kind of sharing myself. So I apologize, everyone. I'm going to have to do this with no camera and talking on my phone. Okay, so next item is our guest presentation. Chief Chris Brunette, thank you very much for being here. He is from the Fire and Life Safety Section from the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control. And Chris, I will turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And it's an honor to be here today. I appreciate everybody's time and the opportunity to tell you a little bit about this. I am here today to tell you about the National Association of State Fire Marshals' new, what we're calling the Residential Sprinkler Design Enhancement Guide. And we'll get into that in just a moment here. If you will indulge me, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and my organization first. So, as Christine said, my name is Chris Brunette. I'm the Chief of the Fire and Life Safety Section here with the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control. We are Colorado's state fire agency. Colorado is the only state in the nation that we're aware of that does not have a state fire marshal, but we fill that role. But we are a state fire agency because we actually have a pretty large operational arm. But then the section that I try to lead is the Fire and Life Safety Section, which kind of fills that traditional role of what you would think of as a fire marshal's office. However, we have the added benefit of having a full service building department in our section. So not only are we fire code officials, but we're building code officials, and in addition to having the responsibility to provide fire investigation services and community risk reduction services. So we're full service shop in that regard. And we are honored to get to participate with the National Association of State Fire Marshals. In fact, my boss, the director of the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, Mike Morgan, is on their board of directors. National Association of State Fire Marshals is as you can guess, a state fire marshal organization that is headed up by a 8-person board of directors. We have our president, Michael Desrochers, who you all know, and then vice president, secretary, immediate past president, and then 4 directors at large, one of which is my boss, Director Mike Morgan. As such, I get to participate with them in a couple different capacities. I get the opportunity to participate in their model codes committee, as well as their community risk reduction committee. And last year, about this time, maybe a little earlier, we had an opportunity come about where we were asked a question to review what happens when a jurisdiction amends out the provisions for fire sprinklers in residential occupancies. And it sparked a broader conversation that kind of went, not only through enforcement and fire prevention, but also kind of falls into the realm of community risk reduction. And so we actually did a joint assignment where both of our committees, community risk reduction and model codes committee, started to look at this. And we started to recognize that there's not a real good guide out there to assist jurisdictions and decision makers in what are the ramifications of amending out those requirements for sprinklers in residential occupancies. And so we set out in May of last year to just pull all that together. Now, what I'll tell you is I'm going to share this guide with you, and it's free for all of you to download. In fact, that was one of our main goals, is we wanted to put in the work to get this together. We wanted to put it together in a format that's usable and easy to reference. But one of our big goals was to make sure that it wasn't something that people had to pay for. We wanted to provide it free of charge so that hopefully it gets on the desk of every code official, building, fire, what have you, as well as the decision makers. We want it on people's desks to easily reference, but also to drive the conversation. I don't know that we've had a real good way of recognizing what the ramifications are or what the trade-offs really are in one easy to use source. And so our hope is not only can our code professionals use this in their codes reviews and inspections, but also to go to their decision makers and say, listen, if we amend out the sprinkler protection requirements, then this is everything else that we're going to need to require. And we haven't done it yet, but I think it would be worthwhile at some point to take this and look at what the cost of those trade-offs are, because I think at the end of the day, it's going to be very close when you start to look at everything you have to add back in when you take out that requirement for sprinkler protection. So with that, I am going to share with you here. Let me get to it. I want to share the link to this guide. So you can find this guide on the NASFM website, which is firemarshals.org. And let me put the direct link to the guide in the chat here, because you can download it, share it widely, please. We encourage that, and put it to good use. It was an effort by several people, and let me pull it up here and we'll start to go through it. But before I do that, I want to pause and make sure there aren't any initial questions or clarifications anybody needs. Okay. Then with that, I'm going to share this with you and we can go through it. One thing I do want to specify here is that that none of this is items that are not currently in the codes. We went into the IRC, the IVC, and the IFC, and we extrapolated all these requirements. These are requirements that are currently in the code. We just wanted to make one easy to use, quick reference guide that puts it all in one place. So this isn't anything that we had to go back to previous editions of the codes to find. It's all stuff that remains in the code today. It's just, I think sometimes we as code officials lose sight of that. And so we wanted to be able to provide it to you or anybody in this one easy to use guide. So again, you can download it for free. Please feel free to use it and pass it along. I do want to point out all the members of this committee, because there were a lot of good people, a lot of smart people, a lot of people who are a lot smarter than I am working on this. I just have the opportunity to present it to you today. So we had Chase Browning from City of Medford Fire Department in Oregon, Ken Bush from the Maryland State Fire Marshal's Office, John Narva from Narva and Associates located in Wyoming. We also had Mark Norford and Mark Young from the Wyoming State Fire Marshal's Office. Mark Norford is retired now. You all know Kelly Nicolello with UL. We were happy to have him on board and helping us out. Carl Thompson, he's retired from the Florida State Fire Marshal's Office, as well as Phil Oakes, who is a big part of NASFM and keeps everything running there. So with that, I want to dive into this guide. We have presented the information in two different formats. Well, really three, and you'll see that at the end here. There's also an appendix that presents the information in a chart form. But again, with the idea that we wanted to present this in an easy to use format, we've decided to put it in two different formats. And so we won't go through the acknowledgements or the abstract right now. And then there's a little information about NASFM. And then, of course, you can read on your own if you like the purpose of the document, but I kind of have just gone over that. And then we're going to go over how to use the guide. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to divide this up into the key elements. So those key elements are residential subdivisions, the IFC appendices that can impact the IRC design and implementation, the occupancy types allowances from the IBC, so that's live work units, owner occupied lodging, care facility with custodial care, care facility with medical care, and care facility in a single family dwelling. Also, there's the fire rated separation, townhouse structural independence, fire protection of floors, emergency escape windows and basements, mezzanines, habitable attics, and photovoltaic systems. And so we break this guide up into all those categories, but we do it in two different ways. So the first way you're going to see is we actually put the requirements if the residential occupancy is sprinklered, along with the same requirement if it's unsprinklered. So this first section will go by those categories that we just went over. So this one, for instance, residential subdivisions, you can see on the same page, if the homes are sprinklered, here's what's required and what's allowed. If they're unsprinklered, then this is what has to be enforced. Okay, and so in this format, you can see the side-by-side of what's required under each of those different categories. And so I won't go through each of those, but please take the time to download it, and you'll see for yourself that this side-by-side shows you exactly what's required in each instance. So the second way we've presented it is we also wanted to present it in a way where if you know that your homes are going to be sprinklered, then we want to put all those requirements together in one section. And so what we've done in the section 2 is it's separated by category. So the first part of the section is if they're sprinklered, then this is all the requirements and this is what the code says you have to do. And then the second part of that section is, and I apologize for the dog if you're in my pup there. The second part is if your residential occupancies are unsprinklered, then this is what you have to do. So it's all the same information. It's just presented in two different methods. That way you can use whatever works best for you. But I did say there's a third way. So if we go to the appendix here, the last way we gave it to you is in a chart form. So this one, we just went through, it's again, all the same just have presented it in a third way for your ease of use. So whatever way you like best, you can utilize, but all the information is there, including the code sites. And again, all we did is got into the I codes for this, primarily IRC, but there are elements of the IFC and IDC. And so all those requirements, whether it's sprinklered or unsprinklered, are there side by side. There are some with some comments just to detail some of the more complicated elements. But really, that's what we have for you. I wanted to leave some time for questions, comments, but I hope that everybody will pull this off the website, download it, and start using it. I really do think it can be a tool in talking with our decision makers, whether that's your community officials or lawmakers. But with that, I will pause and open it up for questions.
Do we have any questions for Chris? Chris, actually, I have one. So how have you seen this be productive or educational, and how far spread have you sent this kind of document or shown that this document exists out to the country?
Well, we're just trying to get around now, just like I'm doing here. So, well, I apologize. Sorry about that. I've got one dog that's part Great Pyrenees, and he feels like he needs to bark at everything. Sorry about that, Christine. So back to your question. We are just trying to promote it now. So when we initially released it, NASFM did put out a press release and tried to push it out to all of our partners that we could to notify people that it's available. But we are still working our way across the country trying to notify people best we can. But if you all like this and can help us promote it, we would very much appreciate it. Again, there's no profit on our end. We just want to be able to provide this guide to code officials and decision makers, of course, for their easy use. But I also think it's probably pretty relevant to builders because they should know what they're getting into if they're not putting sprinklers in their residential occupancies. So I hope that answers your question, Christine.
Yes, actually it does. And we do have, thank you very much. Doug Nelson, you have a question.
Yep. Hey, everybody. Chris, sorry, I jumped on a little late, so I missed a little bit of it. But if there was like one, because we're actually one of those states where I really need to use this document because it's in the codes that we adopt, but then we actually have a state law saying that we can't enforce any kind of residential sprinkler requirements on any kind of 1 and 2 family dwellings. So this is like a great document for us to use, and I'm excited to dig into it further. If there's one takeaway with your guys' research that you guys did in this, because I know I'm part of the committee that that worked on this, but I wasn't involved with it at all. Is there anything that specifically sticks out where you're like, boy, code officials need to understand that they're missing this safety wise? Is there anything that sticks out like that? I know the one thing that like the start of the discussion of this was transoms above doors, I think was part of what just started the discussion. But is there anything else that through your research and putting this together where you're like, everybody needs to know this?
Fire Marshal Nelson, that's such a good question. Again, I apologize. My dogs have been quiet all day. Sorry. They've been quiet all day, and of course now he's choosing to bark.
It's because I'm texting him, Chris.
What's that?
I'm texting your dog and telling him to bark. So yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Yeah, thanks. So Doug, what I would say is the biggest thing is if you go to the second part of this and take a look at the occupancies that are unsprinklered, I would start here. I would grab this section on page 20 and just work down the list, because there were things that I was aware of but had forgotten. A real good example of that, and you know, maybe all you know this, but you know, if you don't sprinkler your residential occupancies, then you got to make sure that if you have basements, which we have a lot of here in Colorado, you have to make sure that they're fully sheathed. The wood structural members have to be fully sheathed, and so that was just one example of, like, you know, I went, oh yeah, I remember that, and I had forgotten that if we aren't sprinkling, we better make sure that happens. So I think all of it's pretty good, and is a good reminder of the things that we could be missing when we amend out those sprinkler provisions.
Thanks.
All right. Matt Hines Aldrich, you have a question.
Sure. Thanks. This is sort of for the everybody. Recognizing that so many states and so many legislatures have taken that approach of either prohibiting sprinkler adoptions or otherwise kind of striking those sections from adoptions. Has there been an effort, because it sounds, from Chris, from your overview, it sounds like this was just saying, like, hey, you know, this is the parts in the code that would apply in case you forgot. Has there been an effort kind of that sort of goes in tandem with that, of saying, recognizing that some communities are going to do these kind of prohibitions, of saying, all right, well, how do we provide proper fire protection and proper separation in buildings that, you know, are going to, we know, are just going to ignore this part of the sprinkler mandates. And so, like, because this is something it's been bothering me for years. I'm like, I don't understand why we haven't made a big effort as an industry of saying, okay, well, if you don't want sprinklers, that's fine, but then you won't have your open floor plan. You're going to have your kitchen is going to have a, you know, a self-closing fire door, and your living room can be no larger than, you know, X square feet, and say it's entirely up to you, but we are going to basically go back to the 1970s ranch, and with self-closing doors and fire-rated assemblies. And that, when we start framing it that way, then sprinklers actually seem like a better option. Whereas kind of like now, it's like, well, you just choose to ignore the sprinkler part of the legislation, and then, oh, good for you. There's no consequence for this. I mean, to your point, and a lot of the documentation here, it really shares that there actually is some pretty potentially rigorous parts of the code that are there. But I don't know. I just think that there seems to be a missed opportunity to really play up the other side of it, saying, all right, well, if this is going to happen, then this is what your house is going to look like. It's going to be a concrete square blocks. And I think then people would actually, we just need to change the incentive structures that sprinklers seem actually beneficial. So I know it's a little bit of a, you know, me in the soapbox, but there was sort of a question in there from our other group.
Well, Dr. Matt, I love that question and the soapbox, because I think that was one of the reasons why we created this, is because we want people to use it to take to their elected officials and say, yeah, listen, you're going to amend out the sprinklers because people are telling you they're too expensive to put in, but now we're going to have to require all these other elements that are going to be potentially just as expensive. And like I said early on, is eventually what we'd like to do is show that contrast between what it's going to cost with sprinklers and then what it's going to cost to add back in all these elements. And so I think that it could be a real good tool for supporting the argument that we need to keep the sprinklers in the code. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on
that. Next in line is Rock Ming.
Hey, Chris, excellent work. I'm a fire protection engineer. I practice in the DC area. So one of my jurisdictions, they actually adopted an NFPA 1 and NFPA 101. Obviously, those are similar requirements, but somewhat more stringent. I just wanted you to be aware, maybe put a disclaimer in there that, other jurisdictions, they might not adopt IFC. So just be aware. Thank you.
No, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that, Rob.
All right, Gary West.
Hey there, friends. I just wanted to jump in here and say something about Chris and that team. We really appreciated it, NASFM, for the work they've done. And what I wanted to mention is there was a lot of time spent on bringing this together. Several people told me that it wasn't going to be worth it to do it because as soon as you got it done, it would be time to change it again. And that's probably true to a certain extent. And did we catch everything in there since this document has come out? I've worked very close with NFSA and some with the AFSA, and there's been a few other comments that have been brought up. For example, there was credit that was given for when the sprinklers were removed out. It was the protection under stairwells, and that was a little piece that was in there. And the document's being recognized by a lot of people right now. We've been doing presentations, all over the country, but I think this is a good place to do this. And I'm so glad that Chris is here doing it as the lead of it. This is a start. NASFM, I know, will come back at some very near future point and review it and probably add to it. And any input or anything that you have for it, I would send it to Chris or any of those team members. Also had information from the home HFSA, the Home Fire Sprinkler Association, also about some things that they noticed that could be in there that wasn't. So it's definitely a growing document. And Rock, I appreciate your comment before, because I think when you look at this, this is a starting point. It's a good foundation for people locally to use this and then put in the things that apply there to that. So good work, and that's my comments.
Great, thank you very much, Gary. Jeff Shapiro.
I just wanted to offer a few points to consider in addition to this. There are many jurisdictions that either don't adopt or statutorily prohibit the adoption of the residential sprinkler requirement, but none of those jurisdictions at this point prohibit the addition of additional sprinkler incentives that you can use at the local level that may not be in the model code, but you can offer additional sprinkler incentives. So to the point that was just brought up about NFPA 101 versus the IRC, there's one part of 101 that has been quite a bit more generous than the IRC forever. 101 waives all means of escape opening requirements in 1 and 2 family dwellings if you put sprinklers in. And that allows the use of fixed glazing or glazing that is not compliant with the IRC opening requirements for any window. The IRC allows that for basements, where we reduce to basically a single opening for the basement if you sprinkler versus one for each sleeping room if you do not. That's a huge financial incentive, especially for basements, because of the window well and ladder requirements, and builders hate having to dig down deep window wells where they've got problems with snow accumulation. They've got to put a cap over it. They have to put fall protection on it. They got to have a ladder inside it. So if you can get, well, the calculated price that I looked at when we did that change a number of years ago was something on the order of $1,000 to $2,000 per window well that a builder saves, not to mention the aggravation of having a subterranean cut in the wall and everything that goes with that. So that's a huge incentive, but even though it was very controversial, ultimately never adopted in the ICC process, at the local level, a jurisdiction could adopt an allowance that says if you sprinkler, you don't have to do any means of escape windows. Some people will support that to get the sprinklers in. Other people will look at it and say it's too generous, and that's the debate we had in the IRC a number of years ago, and eventually compromised and did the basement because that was biggest bang for the buck. So the other thing I did want to mention, beyond offering additional sprinkler incentives locally, you can also offer sprinkler disincentives locally. There's a county in Virginia that has a more restrictive requirement for structure-to-structure separation, opening protection, and fire resistance. There are tons of fires in the fire record of wind-driven fires going structure to structure to structure and causing conflagrations in areas that if you can sell it locally, not as a sprinkler requirement, but instead to say that in order to prevent structure to structure fire spread, we're going to require a 1 hour wall and 1 hour fire shutters on windows within 10 feet of a property line. But if you sprinkler, you don't have to do that. It's another way to get people to voluntarily install sprinklers to avoid a disincentive. And there's nothing anywhere, everybody's picking on sprinklers, but they don't look at any of the other things that can be more expensive than sprinklers, that could be more punitive to the building industry, that could be adopted locally. So that's another tactic that I've looked at deploying at the local level. Last thing I just wanted to mention, because it was not fully resolved during the code development process last cycle, but it was resolved by the Code Correlation Committee. I've been pushing the issue of trying to force, if you stack a duplex as opposed to side by side, but if you put one unit over top of the other, I've been trying to make that a mandatory sprinkler requirement of the code for 3 cycles. The first 2 cycles got beat up and I didn't get anything. Last cycle, we had competing proposals between me and Washington State. They both passed. Eventually, Code Correlation Committee found in favor of the proposal that I had submitted, which doesn't mandate sprinklers, but it does mandate a smoke separation between vertically stacked units, as well as interconnection of the smoke alarms, so that if one unit goes, the other unit alarms. And putting a smoke separation and including the stairway from the upper unit is a not inexpensive proposition, and it was deliberately done that way. So you now have to have a fire and smoke separation between units, but that's waived if you sprinkler. So that's another big incentive for metropolitan areas that are stacked duplexes are becoming very common. Some of those are 4 and 5 stories tall if you use the habitable attic and grade options to get the building taller under the IRC. And that, for those areas, is another good sprinkler incentive to not have to do that smoke separation. So very good document. It's nice that you all pulled all this together, and will be great to continue to develop that into something for the 24 edition and beyond.
Great. Thank you very much. All great discussions. I appreciate it. Chris, there's no other hands raised, but before we close this item, can you give us a little bit more detail on where we can find this document on the NASFM website?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I'll put the link again into the chat. I've also put in the chat my email address, my cell phone number. Please reach out to me if you have any comments, anything you'd like to see changed with this. Like Chief West said, we'll continue to work on it and make it better. And we had to start with something, and that's why we started with the I-codes. But Rock made a good point that there are other codes out there that we might eventually do. Carl, thank you for putting that in there. But yeah, you can, just to share the screen with you here. Here is the website. You'll get to the website here. And so it's firemarshals.org/sprinkler-guide. You'll get here and you'll just click here for a copy of the guide, and you'll be able to download it in PDF form. So Again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to get in front of you, and I hope you'll find this useful, and hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. Really great information, and thank you for being here.
My pleasure and honor.
All right, moving on. I'm looking for any additions or corrections to the agenda today. Seeing none, I will ask for a motion for approval of the minutes for the April 30th meeting in Tampa.
Motion to approve, Doug Nelson.
Second.
Second is Kelly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone. All right. Next is our work group updates. Member engagement work group. Brian.
Yeah, so not a lot new from our meeting just a couple weeks ago in Tampa. Thanks again to Chris for coming on this afternoon and speaking to the sprinkler guide. Working on a couple different options for presentations for next month's online meeting. So hopefully have some more info on that in just a little bit. And I'll make sure and get that information to Carl to send out ahead of time for next month's meeting. For the membership engagement group, our next meeting, I had short notice, apologize for everybody cancel this past week's. I got stuck out on a final inspection that went sideways, but our next meeting will be June the 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern here on Teams.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian. Next, emerging issues and trends. Michael.
Good afternoon, everybody. That was a good presentation by Chris there. I'm glad he could make it today and put that out there. So we had our group meeting on Monday. We had a great turnout for this meeting. We did discuss PFAS issues, and that'll be kind of open dialogue in our meeting moving forward here. But one of the interesting things that we kind of discussed real briefly was an item that we kind of picked up down at the meeting in Tampa, and that was artificial intelligence, which Jeff Shapiro brought up after the meeting. And so we mentioned in our group meeting that I know you're on this call, so we're going to extend an invitation for Jeff if he will kindly meet with us to just give us a 101 introduction to AI. And it's kind of a coincidence that blasted all over the news this week has been all the testimony in front of Congress on this particular issue. So I'm looking forward to reaching out to you, Jeff, to see if you can attend our next group meeting and give us a 101 on AI for us. So that's what we did on Monday. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Moving on to public awareness for those who weren't aware, soon after our in-person meeting in Tampa, Kelly Nicolello graciously volunteered to be the lead of the public awareness work group. So thank you, Kelly, for taking that on. And I will pass it on to you for an update.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we met last week and kind of took a retrospective look as to what public awareness has accomplished, where it's going, what the current goals are, what are some leading sources of information that we want to put out both to the fire service and the general public. So we're kind of doing a self reevaluation, and at the same time, I think that we're looking forward to being able to take some of the work that Emerging Issues has done, some of the work that the FCAC is currently looking at from a code perspective, and turning those into potential public awareness issues that we can publish and put out either as white papers or as opinions or checklists, depending on what the item is in the next few months. Some of the items we're looking at doing and within our group, though, is kind of speeding up the timeline it takes to develop products, you might say. Secondly, a little more responsibility for taking on individual subjects with subject matter experts and getting that information put together and putting it through the ICC system. So it looks all nice and professional and pretty when we're done. But we look forward to putting out some good work. And we've got a small group dedicated to doing this. And of course, we invite anybody else who might want to be a part of this and come alongside. So our next meeting is June 8th at 12 p.m. Central. And if you'd like to be invited, you can give me an email and or get a hold of Carl, and he'll throw that date out to you, and you'll be able to call in at our next meeting. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next is training and education. Mark Wassom had a sudden conflict and couldn't attend today. Just to pass on a couple of items. The work group is working on continuing on the ideas on how presentations, educational trainings can be presented on various learning platforms. So they're still working on that. And their next meeting is June 5th at 2 p.m. Central. Moving on, we have reports from officers and liaisons. So our first is our governing committee board liaison, Director Randy Metz. Randy.
Good afternoon, good morning, membership council, wherever you're at. Just wanted to once again commend the Fire Service Membership Council for a great meeting we had in Tampa. Great energy, great attendance, and I think it's going to springboard us to some really exciting things that are going to happen within the Membership Council and ICC moving forward. Not a whole lot to report from the board directly since then. We are still working. I've been talking with Carl some on advancing the lithium ion issue that the board heard and preparing for what will be presented to the board at our July board meeting in Ohio. So some preparations and discussions have been being had on that particular issue there. And I'm sure Carl will report more on that. As far as board specific stuff, again, I want to encourage everybody to apply for any of our code development opportunities for upcoming committees for Group A and Group B. We're recruiting for all code development committees currently right now, and your application deadline is June 1st. So I hope you take advantage of that. I hope that everybody has found a way to work fire safety into Building Safety Month this year, working with your local building officials. I've seen some really cool partnerships that have occurred there, and just want to, again, encourage the fire service to remain active with Building Safety Month as well. And the ICC annual report is out now and available on our website. If any of you are interested in reading about what the board has been doing, the organization as a whole, that can be found in our annual report there. And again, just want to reinforce that ICC is doing very well right now. And we're looking forward to what the future holds for the organization as a whole. And the fire service plays an important part in that. I did get to spend last week in just outside of Nashville at the Community Risk Reduction Conference. Brian, I got to see speak there, so congratulations, Brian, on a great session there. A lot of great fire service leaders that are looking at risk reduction, kind of in a little different way than what we're used to in code application, but pushing a lot of different philosophies out there on how we can impact community safety. And I'm looking forward to spending next week with some of you at the CFSI dinner in Washington, D.C. So a lot happening, and the fire service is definitely at the forefront for all things ICC right now. So great job, everybody. I can answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Randy. Any questions for Randy? All right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Next, I don't believe, Carl, if you can help me out, I don't believe I see any other ICC officers or directors.
Director McDaniel is on. Director Weesey was on, but I think she had to leave. So Director McDaniel is with us. Director McDaniel, any additional comments from you, sir?
I don't have any additional comments. Randy did an excellent job. He hit all the buzzwords. He hit the Code Development Committee June 1st deadline. He talked about the advancement of the lithium ion issue. We look forward to seeing the where you take that and when we bring it back to the board. I did make some recommendations, Carl. We'll be bringing those forward. And the AI issue, we're dealing with that at ICC as well. You may see some features or a survey or something to that effect come out with regards to membership. Pairing somebody with somebody else. We may use some of that technology. We may not, depending on where the news media takes us in that aspect. But no, Randy did a great job. If there's any questions, I'm definitely here for as long as I can today.
Great. Thank you, Director McDaniel, for being here. We appreciate your time. Next, report from the chair. I also wanted to echo Randy's thanks to all of you who attended our in-person Tampa meeting. It is really great to see everybody on the screen, but it is even better to see everyone in person and be able to talk to everyone, at the breaks and things like that. So it was one of our better attended in-person meetings. And I think we got a lot of good discussions and conversations to be had. So thank you again for all of you for attending. Next is report from the Vice Chair, Tim Diehl.
Christine, I think he had to step away for a doctor's appointment. He put that in the chat a little earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I multiple things going. I didn't see that in the chat. All right. Going down to our staff liaison report, Carl.
Great. Thanks so much, Christine. Hello, everyone. It's been a busy month of business and travel. So happy Building Safety Month to all of you. We kicked it off down in Tampa for the spring interchange. Many of you were able to join. I just put the link in the chat as well to our Building Safety Month website, buildingsafetymonth.org. So this is week 3. It's Disaster Preparedness Week. Lots of great messaging and tips in there and ready tools for you to be able to go and download and use if you'd like to share and celebrate along with us. So for the members of the governing committee, I wanted to let you know that your expense reports from Tampa have been submitted. I'm waiting on one piece from one of our members, but other than that, everybody is submitted. And I would ask that if you don't see anything in maybe the next week or so, to please let me know, and I'll be glad to follow up on the expense reports for you on your behalf. As Director Metz said, the lithium-ion ad hoc committee discussions are ongoing, preparing for the board's July 7th meeting in Ohio. As he mentioned, we are working on some thoughts around scoping, initial thoughts on composition, and then talking a little bit about kind of, high-level potential scope, goals, objectives, purpose, those kinds of things to be able to get this in a little bit better of a format to share with the board and get it to their decision-making. So more on that as it comes. Summary of events, as I said, busy few weeks. So since I last saw all of you that were able to make it to Tampa, departed Tampa, came back home for a couple of days, and then was off to Emmitsburg for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation Memorial Weekend. That was May 4 through 7, where we honored 144 firefighters that were lost in the line of duty. I participated as a member of the command staff there and actually wore the deputy PIO's role and hat for that one, and even spent some time with our food service team serving barbecue meals to families and our volunteers there. So if you haven't seen that, it's on the NFFF website, and if you haven't participated previously, there's always room for great folks. So I just wanted to let you know that is such a phenomenal event, and if you have the opportunity to attend and even to spend a little more time volunteering, I'd be glad to point you in the right direction there. The IAFC's Community Risk Reduction Leadership Conference was May 8th through 11th in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I presented to the Fire and Life Safety Section Board of Directors, and I know Chief King, Chief Marshall are on today. We talked a little bit about the ICC's new code development process, sponsored the event as well, particularly the lithium battery session that Chief O'Brien and Chief Coco from Toronto Fire Services put on. So I guess I wanted to ask really quick, Chief King, I'll put you on the spot, or Chief Marshall, if you had any words to say on behalf of the FLSS about your conference and how that went for you all.
Well, it doesn't sound like Andy is going to jump in, so I guess I'll pop in. Yeah, we had the conference in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It was the Community Risk Reduction Leadership Conference, which is different than the Vision 2020 conference held at the same location. It was a really good conference. It continues to grow, which is one of the good things, and we had a couple of presentations on lithium-ion batteries that actually generated a lot more interest than we had even anticipated. Just to give you an idea, our conference rooms generally are really small, can hold about 35, 40 people. And we actually wound up having to move. We had two different presentations on lithium-ion batteries, and we had to move those into the main conference center area because they were just overwhelmingly, there was overwhelming interest in those particular things. The Fire and Life Safety Section meeting is also a part of it. It actually is kind of a pre-conference activity. We did have our meeting and talked a lot about the things that we're doing and where we're going and where we're headed, and particularly kind of what's going on with the conference and how we can make it better and all those kinds of things. So, and it was that too was a really good meeting. We really appreciate Carl and his presentation on the new process for ICC and how the new code development process will work. He has a lot of really good slides that he showed us that really lay out the process very, very well and help you to understand it even better. So if you haven't seen that, I highly encourage you to seek that out. And, if you're involved in the code development process, because I think it's going to be a learning thing for all of us who are kind of involved in that process. So, yeah, that's about it from Murfreesboro.
Great, thanks, Chief Marshall. Chief King, didn't know if you had any words on that. If not, we'll keep moving. Okay. So coming out of the CRRL conference, got on the airplane and was looking at my email, as I often do, and got an email from the Colorado Governor's Office inviting the International Code Council to attend a bill signing Friday morning at 9:30 in the morning in Jefferson County, Colorado. So made my way back home, stayed up a little late trying to make some airline reservations, and got myself out there on Thursday. With thanks to Chief Mike Morgan, the director of the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, and Chris Brunette's boss. So happy to share with you that on May 12th, Colorado Governor Jared Polis signed SB 23-166 that establishes a wildfire resiliency code board in the state of Colorado. And I'm going to put the link to the ICC press release here in the chat for you. The highlights of that are it's basically the code board is going to be tasked with adopting a statewide minimum code for fire resistant construction and defensible space in Colorado's WUI areas. So there's a lot to kind of take in there and digest. I know Chris Brunette is still on, and I'm going to ask him to speak to a little bit of that, but also it should be noted that this bill that I'm speaking about was only one of 11 wildfire related bills that the governor signed on May the 12th. And Mike Morgan and I spent, Mike was gracious enough to be able to give me a ride, and we needed his state vehicle chasing the governor among 3 different locations there. We started out in Jefferson County. We went from there to Colorado Springs, and then on to Centennial for the final stop of the day, where all of these bills were signed, including the last of which was a bill authorizing another $25 million to purchase a second Sikorsky Firehawk helicopter for the state of Colorado under the Division of Fire Prevention and Control. So lots going on out there. And Chris, I don't know if you wanted to add a little bit. I know your organization that you have in your section has just grown exponentially because of these bills. So maybe you want to share a little bit of that with our group too. We'll see if Chris is still on here. Let me see.
Sorry, Carl. So
Right.
first I had the dogs going crazy. Now we're having a crazy rainstorm, and I think my internet's not tying in. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you just fine.
Okay. So you went out on me for a minute there, but I think maybe you were throwing it over to me to talk a little bit more about Senate Bill 166.
Yeah, that and the, if you wanted to kind of hit the highlights, I talked about the, the bill for the second helicopter, and then, there were, 11 total bills. So, and I also tweeted up by saying that your section has now grown exponentially. So there you go.
Yeah, no, we have benefited from lawmakers who have recognized the need for fire prevention in Colorado. So we're very blessed in that way. But before I get started, I want to say first off, Carl has embarrassed me because he made it back to Colorado from Tennessee for the bill signings, but I did not. So all the pictures include Carl, but they don't include me. He is a rock star, and it's not just for getting there for the bill signings, but he and ICC have been supportive throughout that process of getting this WUI code board passed. And so we'll start with that. But before I do that, there's another person on the call who was instrumental in helping with this, and that's Chief Robert Marshall. He even came out to Colorado to help. And so if it wasn't for the efforts of these two great people and many, many others, I don't know that this would have happened. So it's a huge step for Colorado. Like I said earlier, we are a very strong local control state, and for this state to pass a statewide WUI code board bill is huge. And I didn't know that I would ever see it happen in my career. So just a testament to everybody who participated in that. But what it does is it creates a 24-person code board, 21 voting members, 3 non-voting ex officio members, who are tasked in the next 2 years with number one, deciding where the code will apply in Colorado, so where the WUI is in Colorado, and then what code will apply. So they'll determine what the code looks like, and then finally what the enforcement measures look like. So we're kind of waited with bated breath, and of course we'll be participating fully throughout the next 2 years, but in 2 years we'll know better what that looks like for Colorado. So where Senate Bill 166 kind of takes care of new residential construction, we also had an effort to look at existing residential construction. And so there was House Bill 1273 that also passed that created the Wildfire Resilient Homes Grant Program. And that program will reside in the Fire and Life Safety section. And what we'll be tasked with is, well, first off, it provides some seed money for that grant program. It's not a lot of money, so we'll be working on trying to find additional money for that. But it gives us the opportunity to incentivize hardening of residential structures in our wildland urban areas. So that's big. Carl talked about the funding of the second Firehawk helicopter. In addition to that, we were a little embarrassed because up until Senate Bill 13 passed this year, we had one fire investigator who could help out at the local jurisdictional level with investigations. When you look at our surrounding states, it's pretty dismal. Our surrounding states have no less than 4 investigators, and that's the smaller states surrounding us. So our lawmakers stepped up and they increased our investigations capability 8-fold. We will now have 8 full-time investigators who will help at the local jurisdictional level Local jurisdictions will still have the responsibility, but will be available to help. And then it provides the overhead in addition to some data analysts to help out with all the data that's going to come out of that. So those are kind of the highlights. And of course, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a big proponent of community risk reduction. And so I can't leave without saying they also stepped up and funded and staffed our community risk reduction effort, Fire Safe Colorado, giving us 4 risk reduction specialists and overhead to run that. So a lot of good things happening in Colorado, but I recognize it's not happening in a silo. It's because of good people like Carl and Robert Marshall that things are happening. And I also recognize it's because of the tragedies that have occurred here that are driving a lot of this. And so we're hoping to prevent those. So sorry for talking so long, Carl, but thank you for the opportunity. Everybody else is probably sick of hearing me talk.
Not at all, Chris. I feel similarly. So thank you. And thanks for the hospitality. And, like we've talked about before, and I'll say it to this group, Colorado, I think, is really leading by example in the country. And I don't just say that because, we're friends and colleagues. I say that because particularly the Colorado Fire Commission, and I want to recognize the efforts also of Bob Sullivan, my colleague over at NFPA. I know Robbie Dawson's on today, and hopefully you'll pass that along to Bob. But it was good to see Bob out there at the bill signing too, because we work together with the Colorado Fire Commission, and Bob sits as a ex officio member of that group. But we also briefed Fire Marshals Association of Colorado, which is a chapter of ours, and I know also pretty active with the NFPA as well, and getting in front of these stakeholder groups so that it was really a broad stakeholder driven conversation that in my opinion was really thoughtful. And we spent a lot of time trying to get it there through the processes that you guys have set up in your office to facilitate the Colorado Fire Commission. So, the partnership there is awesome. And I think that that's something that, you saw Robert come out, Chief Brunette from California was also there, Justice Jones from Texas, in Austin, and several other folks participated in that. And, it's because we facilitated that network and that group. So I know that the hard work begins now, right? And where this code ends up 2 years from now, we're going to leave a lot more blood, sweat, and tears on the table than we did to get this legislation passed, that I'm sure of. So thanks again for all your help.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. So moving on, as Chief Metz mentioned earlier, the Code Council's got an open call for 3 different committees right now, and I just put the link in, and I'm going to give you some additional text here too. So that will take you to the page where the open calls are. And then the specific committee applications are in there as well too. I believe there's an online application. So you've got code development committees closing June 1st, code interpretation committees closing June 1st, and then finally code correlation committee closes June 1st as well. So a special message to our IAFC and to our NASFM members. We need to coordinate, and particularly kind of aiming this at both I know Chief Marshals heard this from me at the FLSS meeting, and also Chief West heard this from me while we were at CRRL, that we've got to get the online applications buttoned up for the folks that participate from your organizations by now, between now and June the 1st. So like to get those done as soon as we can, and happy to help facilitate in any way that I can. And we'll work through those as we always do. So reminder to others, though, too, that you are welcome in that process. And you've got all the information in front of you. So just click there. And if you have any questions, reach out to myself or any of our members from the ICC, and they'll be glad to kind of walk you through that process. And I'll wrap up with kind of the forward-looking piece of this, which is been home this week, but headed out on Sunday to the Congressional Fire Services Institute symposium and dinner. On Sunday afternoon, the U.S. Fire Administrator is hosting a work group meeting for all the work groups that have been developing work product coming out of the United States Fire Administrators Summit last year in October. So one of those big work groups is the Codes and Standards work group, which I'm participating in. And we're going to brief out to the administrator on Sunday, and then kind of get the rest of our work plan and direction in order based on what we hear back from her. So that's going to take place on Sunday. The symposium takes place Monday and Tuesday. There is a board reception for a few of our folks, as well as the main dinner on Tuesday evening. And then I'll wrap up that week with the National Advisory Committee meeting Wednesday morning, 9 to 11 or noon, I believe. So for the folks that are on the governing committee that are attending, you will receive an email from me either later this afternoon or first thing in the morning with some details. And Randy, that also includes to the board members that are participating. So if they have any questions, send them to me, but I'll be sending them out proactively here ahead of their trip, so they know what to expect when they get to Washington. And Wednesday evening, we are doing a new office opening for our brand new office in Washington, D.C., as well as combining that with a Building Safety Month reception. For those of you that are attending, if you had not received an invitation from me, you are invited, and I would be glad to share that with you. It was simply an oversight, but if you're going to be here Wednesday evening, 5 to 7, you are more than welcome to join us in our new digs. That's all I have, Christine. Unless anyone has any questions, I'll send it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Any questions for Carl? Right. Thank you very much. So now we have reports from our various membership councils, liaisons. I know Tom Allen, he had to leave for Building Membership Council. I did see Mark Matheny. Are you still, Mark, not to put you on the spot, but in Tom's absence, would you like to say a few words on behalf of BMC?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I wouldn't have it any other way than to be put on the spot. So, yeah, thank you. Always an honor to be here. A great group, great agendas that you guys have, and work that each of your groups do. So wonderful. You know, our three groups basically are made up of Raise the Profile, Continuity and Outreach, and Innovation and Best Practices. We always appreciate Tim Diehl as a co-chair for the Continuity and Outreach. He and Andre from Jefferson County, Colorado, doing a great job kind of rebuilding what that continuity and outreach looks like, and kind of developing where that goes as a landing page and probably like a benchmarking page for the items that each of the different membership councils are doing. Let's see, Raise the Profile, working on a recognition letter that can go to local jurisdictions and local municipalities to recognize the work that each of kind of a new participating new building official, a new code official comes in and recognized to the city council or the county commissioners or something along there, some city or county management level or township. And then best practices, you know, we've worked on, we may have already mentioned this, but for many years worked in collaboration with IAS and major jurisdictions to create the second edition of the best practices document. I'm actually going to put it in the little chat thing there. So you can grab it there on that page. If you go down to the lower right-hand corner is the actual document, and you can flip through that. It's a great item that you can find best practices for all kinds of different pieces of the function of a jurisdiction. The other fantastic thing about that is just above the document, there's a little tab in there. If you guys have best practices for what you're doing, or that you know of them, or if you know somebody who's doing the best practice, send them that link. You can sign up right there and include your best practice right on there, and it'll get amended into this document continuously throughout the years to come. So once again, always good to be here. I appreciate all the great work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. Moving down to Global Membership Council, Rock, welcome.
Thank you, Chief Reed. The Global Membership just had our second meeting the last week of April. So we are planning for our ABM. As you know, that typically there's a global day, which is has been popular. Obviously, you know, with the changing formats, that's no longer available. So we are planning maybe a sponsored lunch, you know, have some interesting topics at the lunch hours we can discuss. And then we offer 4 webinars per calendar year. So we have 3 out of the 4 already planned out. In June, the topic will be trade schools. In late August, it will be accessibility. And then October, due to overwhelmingly interest, we're gonna have again the topic on lithium-ion batteries from international perspective. The participating countries will be Singapore, Australia, the Netherlands. So we do have a fourth webinar opening. So I'll reach out to Chief Wassom, see if there's opportunity for further collaboration. That's all I have for reporting.
Great. Thank you very much, Rock. Are there any other liaisons or other membership councils that would like to say a few words to the group? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. All right, moving on. I just have a couple of ongoing business items briefly. So Tim, Diehl, and I attended a membership council leadership meeting after our in-person governing committee meeting and in Tampa. And it was the various leaderships from different membership councils, and it was facilitated by ICC staff to get our feedback on how the membership councils are going. The membership councils have been in existence for 10 years now, so they were seeking to get some feedback, opinions from the membership councils on how things were going, and general feedback. So we did provide some feedback. Did mention about the website update, that it seemed to stall with what we had proposed as options, or at least to make something more user friendly for the FSMC webpage as well as the other membership councils. Ed Lazinski, from the chair of the Building Membership Council, he also spoke to that item. So we'll see. They're going to be taking back all of the feedback and survey items that the majority of the leadership completed at their request, and they're going to compile them, and then we will wait for next steps and see where that goes. So so it was a meeting that I hope is the first of more collaboration with ICC staff about the membership councils and how we can make them better and user friendly to serve our membership. So the second item is the FSMC leadership mentee opportunity. This is an opportunity for anyone on the membership governing committee who would like to understand a little bit more about the chair, vice chair position and the leadership roles. If you have an interest in perhaps moving up into one of those roles in the future, we always like to try to keep people engaged and kind of understand what the responsibilities are entailed in either a vice chair or chair position. I will say that I was fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to do this when Gary West and Randy Metz were chair and vice chair at the time. So when I moved into the vice chair role and was elected into that role, I felt that it was more of a seamless transition. So I just want to put that out there. I mentioned it before in the Tampa meeting, but just to throw that out there for the governing committee members, if you have an interest in perhaps understanding a little bit more, please don't hesitate to give me a call or contact me or Carl. Being that I had done it myself, I can maybe give you some more insight of what that all entails. So I just want to pass that on. Next item is our next meeting is June 15th, 1:30 Eastern. That will be the virtual meeting. And now I will open it up for questions or comments from the audience, as well as I'll just combine good of the order at the same time. So does anyone have any comments or questions or items they would like to advise the group? Please raise your hand in the meeting room and I will call on you. All right, not seeing any hands raised. Next would be a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do you all want to stay with us?
So moved. So moved.
I think I heard a motion.
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you everyone for being on today. Appreciate your time and your participation, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care. Bye-bye.